Welcome back. In the last video, we set up some images. We have some things working. This one points to an image on YouTube. And then this one points to an image in our project. So if we see, there's that image right there. We're going to style things. Styling is what makes your web page look pretty. Our styles are going to go in the head. Remember how I said the head is metadata? We'll go ahead and add our style there because it's metadata about how the page should look. Styles are interesting. We've been writing things in tags for a while now, which is helpful, but we don't use tags when we write styles. In fact, we use a language called CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. They allow us to take styles and cascade them across our document. For example, if we want every image, IMG, to have a height of 100 pixels, we could do this. And if we refresh, now our images are uniform. This image affects every image, every tag with the same tag. So IMG, any tag with an IMG. We can do something else too. We can say we want maybe our article to have a background color of aqua. That sounds fun. Save, refresh. Maybe it's not the prettiest thing, but it's not bad. You know what would make it look nicer is if we had our articles and we gave them padding. Padding is interesting. It's an attribute that creates space from the border to the content. So if we say padding, and padding is interesting again because it has multiple values. It has a top value, top, right, bottom, left. So in our case, maybe we want the top to be 10 pixels, the right to be 10 pixels, the bottom to be 10 pixels, and the left to be 10 pixels. If we save, now there's some padding. Okay, this is looking better. There's actually a shorthand for this if all the values are the same. It's just 10px. I'm going to save this, refresh, nothing changed. We'll use the shorthand when we can. Less typing is always good. Now, there's an interesting dilemma. This image is up against this article. Kind of looks weird. It'd be nice if there was a little bit of space in between them. We have a couple different ways we can handle that. We can make the articles have space under them, or we can make the images have space over them. Since it seems more common that we would want things to not rush up against the article, not the opposite of the article rushing up against the image, what we'll do is we'll add a margin bottom of 10 pixels. If I save and refresh, there's now some space. This is looking pretty good. Okay, we've written a lot. Let's talk about what this actually is. So this is called a selector. There are three, there used to just be three. There are three main types of selectors. There are a lot of selectors now, but there are three main types. And you can see here it says selector specificity 001. This one is an element selector. We're selecting all image elements. We're selecting all article elements. This specificity here is called a class selector. And then this one here is called an ID selector. The higher this number, the leftmost number, the more specific that selector is. I'll show you what I mean here. So we have this image of, no, I don't want that. So I'm going to add a class attribute onto both of our images. This will be called dog image. You can call this whatever you want. Whatever, class has to be the word class, but whatever's in these quotes can be whatever you want. Now if I go to this other image and add the same thing, but instead of dog image, I'm going to say Brad image. We can come up here, and we're going to use another selector. This one's called a class selector. So if I type dog image, and then these are curly braces. So the contents of your selector, basically the rules that you want to apply to that element, go inside of curly braces. So in our case here, maybe we want to do something different with the dog image. Maybe we want the height of the dog image to be 200 pixels. We have two styles for for that image, right? Because technically that dog image is an image tag, but it also has a class of dog image. This is where specificity comes into play. Notice this is 0, 1, 0, and this is 0, 0, 1. 0, 1, 0 is more specific. So this is the one that will get applied. If I save and reload my page, you can see the dog image is not 100 pixels now, it's 200. We told it 200 here, but we also told it 100 here. That's how specificity works. If we right-click and inspect this, we can use our debugging tools, and we can see that there are two heights applied to this, right? There's a height here for image, and a height here for dog image, the class dog image. This height has a strike-through through it. That means it's not applied. And the reason that it would not be applied is because either it's an invalid value, so if I change this to like PXX, that's an invalid value. You'll notice something too, because the more specific value was invalid, it falls back to the one that is valid, even if it's less specific. If I fix this, you'll notice that this one has the strike-through now, and it doesn't apply this value because this one's applied instead. The more specific value is applied instead. Okay. There's one more type that we haven't talked about. I'm actually going to change this dog image tag. I'm going to add another attribute called an ID. This is a unique identifier which must be unique to the whole document. Its purpose is to identify the element when linking using a fragment identifier, scripting, or styling with CSS. I'm going to call this best image. Maybe we want the best image to actually do something cool too, like have a height of 400 pixels, something even bigger. You'll notice that we use an octothorpe here, a hashtag if you're young and hip, unlike me. This symbol, the octothorpe, is what targets an identifier, an ID. If we hover over this, you have select your specificity of 100. Now if we save and we refresh, this image got even bigger. And if we look at it again, best image is more specific than dog image, which is more specific than image. Now, if we don't have information in best image, but we do in dog image, it will still work. So for example, if we come back here and we add a width of 400 pixels, you're going to see some well, that one actually is a really bad example. 800 pixels. Now the image gets pulled. That's because there's no width in this more specific selector. If there was a width, for example, we can use our debug tools to force one. It will knock those other two out. Okay, that's a lot. That can be kind of confusing. One of the most important things is selector specificity. So just being familiar with that, knowing that tags are the least specific, classes are the middle of the road, and then IDs are the most specific. That being said, it's pretty common in modern web development to not use a lot of IDs. You can, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a pattern that we seem to have embraced of focusing more on classes than IDs, because sometimes selector specificity can be really hard to reason with. When you only have two that you're working with, it's a little easier, and really when you predominantly only have one level of specificity, it's even easier. There's one more thing we should talk about. You can combine these. So if I have image.dogImage, you can see here that the specificity is 0, 1, 1. It takes in the 0, 1, 0 of dog image, but also the 0, 0, 1 of image. This gives you a lot of flexibility with your specificity and can help you when targeting specific elements in certain ways. I'm going to undo that and remove this massive width under dog image. Now if I refresh, okay, things aren't stretched. This looks pretty good. We also talked about making this image round because round is nice, right? Maybe we want them all to be round. So what we can do is we can come in and we can add a border radius. Let's say for all of our images, we want a 50% border radius. Now they're all round. maybe I don't like this one being round, right? So what can we do? Well, we have a lot of options. We could actually add a rule for Brad image with the border radius of 50%, and then we can remove it off the image tag here. I'm going to go ahead and save, reload, so you can see that. Hey, that works. That's pretty good. Or we could try using specificity to overwrite them. One's not more wrong than the other in this case because we only have 2 images, but I'm going to take the specificity approach just to show you once more how that works. Hopefully really drive this one home. So if I save and reload, our image is back to circle. We don't want that circle. Maybe we want rounded borders. So if we take a border radius and we add a 10 pixel border radius, not 50%, to the dog image, and we save it, now we have nice curved edges. But if we scroll up, we still have a circular image. That's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. One more thing we can talk about is maybe we want our paragraphs to have a certain color, or not a certain color, but a certain type of text, right? We could do font, family, let's do Helvetica. Arial, Helvetica, sans serif. There we go. You'll notice that the font just changed. This is good. We have a couple other options. We can target the body to turn all of our text to Helvetica, which looks pretty nice. I'm actually pretty happy with that. Or we have another element called the every element. And this sets every single element to have Helvetica as the font. Images don't have a font, so that's not really relevant for this image. So maybe this isn't the best option. And then also, one thing to think about too is that we would have to overwrite this on anything that we don't want to have that image. If we use the body, technically you're still overwriting it, but it's a little different. In fact, it's probably not worth getting into for this series, but there are multiple ways to handle this, I guess is what I'm getting at, and there are pros and cons to each of them. Okay, so we have our web page, we have some text, we changed the text, it looks nice, we have this, it looks nice. Let's maybe add one more tag. We're going to add paragraph, and we're going to add font size 18 pixels. This should be a little bigger. Yep, a little bigger. Let's do 20. Great. So we have a big page. I'm not sold on this aqua color, so let's just take a look at what else we have really quick. Now, there are 2 options when you're working with colors, more or less. You can use any of these predetermined values, which are really nice and pretty, but may not be exactly what you're looking for. The other is something called a hex code. They start with an octothorpe, again, a hashtag if you're young and hip, and then there's 6 or 3 values. So for example, 0 is going to be the lowest possible value, F is going to be the highest possible value. So in our case, it's red, green, blue. Roy G. Biv. If 4th grade art class is coming back to you, this is why. So if we say we want something to be completely red, it would be FF 0, 0, 0, 0. And if we save that, VS Code even gives us a little hint here. One of the nice things about VS Code is that if you hover over this, you can actually change this value, and it will update the hex code for you. So you can play around with it like that. Or you can just guess at some numbers and pick the ones that work well for you. I think we probably want, let's see, our entire web page is kind of light, so maybe like a cream color. So maybe we do like F, C, 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 green, blue. Actually, F, C, 3, 3. That's way too bright. But it gives us a yellow. Actually, that's not that bad. Okay. So yeah, you can play with those values. You can also use the little scrolling selector here and pick one that works well for you. We could also do like that cream color that I was talking about would be something like this. That's a little darker than I expected. try that. Yeah, there we go. Something that is not too contrasty, but just enough to give it like an extra section. Okay, this video has been going on for a bit. We've covered styling, the basics of it. Again, MDN is your friend. So if you come to MDN, go to Guides, CSS. You can learn how to style things using CSS. This is going to be the next step for you. Come in here, learn about all the options you have available, play with some of them in the browser, and just try figuring out what works well for you. Maybe you're interested more about styling lists. You can find that section here because maybe you chose to use an unordered list. You know what? Let's actually add one, shall we? We're going to copy this, and then I'm just going to paste it. You can write it yourself if you'd like, though. Under this article, I'm going to add another section. This one's going to be an H2, some of my favorite things. And then we're going to paste. UL is an unordered list. LI is a list. So in our case, we are going to add something like, what do I like? I like pizza. I like my friends. I like my family. And I like learning. Okay, if we save this and refresh, we can go back to our site. And you can see some of my favorite things are listed right here as well. Now that we have this element added, my takeaway for you is to use the styling lists page and figure out how to style this in a way that looks nice for you. They have some examples here using tools like line height and font weight. Weight is what makes things bold, for example. They also have list style types, so you can do upper Roman, and that'll give you Roman numerals. You can change the bullet position. You can use a custom image for your bullets, like this, and much more. That's for you to figure out as part of your homework, and then we will sync back up here in just a minute.